This certainly was one of the movies of all time. A few days ago, I watched Transformers Rise of the Beast, and I needed a few days to sort of go over my feelings, check out how other people are feeling, and basically formulate a review here. Now, if I could summarize it in just one short sentence, it would be wasted potential. This movie really had the potential to be something great, and it really feels like it lost itself along the way. So I do have a script here which I wrote immediately after watching the movie. Not immediately, but the same day I watched the movie, the night after watching the movie, and I'm gonna go through and give you my thoughts. Now this is gonna be a little bit similar to the Evangelion video that I did, and hopefully I won't go too off script and too babbling, but if I do, just bear with me. We'll try and get through it. Oh boy. So this film definitely has a lot of issues, a lot of potential, like I just mentioned. Unfortunately, it's wasted potential with such a collection of characters that have such a rich history behind them, and that's where I feel like a lot of the wasted potential was. Is you've got all these characters that all have really good stories behind them. You know, you've got, of course, the original Optimus Prime and all the other Autobots, but you also have the Maximals. You've got Optimus Primal and Rhinox and Cheetor, like, and Airazor. Like, these are all characters that have so much character, you know, so much of a history that really could have been explored in this movie that I feel really wasn't. And there will be some things that I talk about in the spoiler section, so we're going to start with a non-spoiler section, by the way, and we will go to a spoiler section later. Yeah, you got a lot of potential here that really wasn't used. You know, you'd hope they'd use some of that. Unfortunately, they don't. They hint at the idea of a better story, and that's just the thing. Like, there are many points where they hint at some sort of history, some sort of deeper, more interesting ideas that they never really develop, which I was really hoping they would. You know, there's like these hints of Airazor and Primal's history where they have like this sort of bond, and it really just wasn't developed. I mean, yeah, it was hinted in a way that it felt natural and it didn't feel forced, and you definitely get that feeling, but it really just wasn't developed past just a few lines or people that are like hardcore fans that would get a rise out of it, you know, and that's what I feel like a lot of moments in this movie were just Easter eggs, really, for like proper fans to get excited about, and for me that's not enough, especially coming after watching Beast Wars and Beast Machines, which I hold as some of the best Transformers fiction ever written. Like, genuinely super interesting stuff there, but it's not developed past that. You know, you get none of that history that really was interesting, and they don't have to take from that same timeline. You know, they could just take ideas, take ideas of like Primal feeling like he isn't strong enough and has to develop himself. And that's the thing. We get a Primal in this that's very confident, apart from the very beginning of the movie, where he has to do something that he doesn't want to do. But besides that, you get a very confident Primal. Like, he is the most confident character out of all these characters here. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily feel like him. It does as well, and it doesn't. I'll talk a bit more about that in spoilers in the film recap. But yeah, they really didn't fill this out. They ask you to fill in a lot of the blanks of like the characters' histories that they hint at, which is poor writing. You know, like that's something that you really want to avoid as a writer, is making your audience do all the work. Yeah, you can do things that are vague. You could do ideas that can have multiple meanings behind them. That is usually a really good thing. But they really didn't do that here. They really just gave you little hints of like, oh, you know, Maximals have got this history behind them. Optimus is going through some things right now, but we're not going to develop it. You know, we're just going to give you the hints of it, and we're going to let you fill in all the blanks. Let your mind fill it in, and you shouldn't be making your audience do the work. You know, it does feel like it tries to please both fans and the random viewer, which is, again, I guess it kind of goes back to the fact that like they're trying to get you to fill in the blanks. It Part of the reason they were doing that would maybe to try and make it more of a casual experience. So like if they do kind of extrapolate a bit more on those things, like the history of these characters, it's something that you don't feel like you have to know. But then again, the fact that you have to fill in these blanks, if you are a big fan, a hardcore fan, then you do kind of know. But then again, this is a new continuity and timeline, so I don't know. It's a bit confusing. The cast. Let's talk about the cast. Another thing, feeling very mixed on. You know, half of it felt really good. Genuinely, I enjoyed performances of some of the cast here. Peter Cullen, Optimus Prime, definitely gives you a certain feeling in this film, which I don't know how much of that character that Peter Cullen would like, because it is well known that Peter Cullen does not like the direction that Optimus Prime went in the Michael Bay directed films. By the way, this film was produced by the same producers as the Michael Bay films, as well as Michael Bay, but it was directed by someone else who was pretty good. We'll get back to that later because there's something I want to talk about there. But yeah, Peter Cullen, it didn't feel like him for some parts of it. It didn't feel like Optimus Prime Peter Cullen for some parts of it. And it feels like kind of the performance reflected that, for sure. Like Peter Cullen probably didn't enjoy some of these lines, and he made it known. That's for sure. So yeah, Optimus definitely has at least two notable lines that don't feel like the classic Optimus, that do feel like the Michael Bay Optimus character. And I mean, at least in the Michael Bay continuity, you could kind of excuse it in the fact that he's just sick of this war sort of thing, but it still doesn't feel like Optimus Prime yet. He doesn't seem like the sort of person that would get sick of the war. And like, he does have a reason for some of these lines in the movie, but to a proper fan, it feels wrong. It feels dirty. Like, to a casual viewer, it'll be fine. And again, it's that idea of like they're trying to please both casual viewers and hardcore fans. Really, doesn't. They should really just commit to one or the other. Pete Davidson was actually alright. You know, he wasn't. It wasn't bad. I'm curious of if there was any ad lib in there. There were a few lines that were a little, especially for a kids movie. It doesn't seem like it fits with the age demographic, but I mean, people laughed. And let me just say, I did watch this in an advanced screening, basically the same time, I think like a few days after the rest of the world, because New Zealand's getting it later in the month, whereas I got to see it with a bunch of other people around the 10th of June, which is cool, instead of the 21st, which is the public release in New Zealand. But yeah, Pete Davidson, he was right. You know, he wasn't distracting, which was one of my main concerns. I was worried that he was going to be like very quippy, but not in like a natural way, not in a Transformer way. And I guess you could kind of say he had a little bit of that, but didn't feel too far off. But yeah, apart from just a few jokes that just wouldn't necessarily fit in sort of age demographic, it was pretty good. Peter Dinklage, he seemed to be having fun. Like, I do really like him as a voice actor, and yeah, I have a bit of bias because of Destiny. He was the original Ghost voice actor, and I actually kind of prefer that to a current Ghost voice actor, but a current Ghost voice actor is pretty good as well. But yeah, he definitely seemed to be having fun. He felt very cartoony. I'd say all the villains felt very cartoony. That's not my fault. That's, of course, Vangelis has already said that, and by the way, you're going to hear a lot of things that other reviewers have said that I agree with. I'm going to put into this review, and I will try and point them out when it's not 100% my opinion, but it is something I agree with and would have put in if I had a, I guess if I had a more creative mind, you could say. But yeah, Peter Dinklage had fun there for sure, and he definitely gave it all. I kind of wish this was a little deeper. Same with Unicron, which of course we know is in this movie. No, that's not a spoiler because of the trailers. I kind of wish the trailers didn't show him in the movie, that he was going to be in the movie. I wish it was kind of like a big reveal. That would have been cool. But no. Unicron, same. I wish he had a deeper voice. Like, come on. I don't think anyone would have complained if you tried to imitate Orson Welles' voice, because that voice, that performance, even though he was pissed for half of it, or probably all of it, and he died afterwards, it was genuinely, like, it was a good performance. Let's see. Anthony Ramos as Noah. Could have had a lot more to work with. And that I'll come back to that with the characters a little bit. But he's set up to be ex-military. They never extrapolate for that, which could have been really interesting. There was a scene with Optimus Prime, which could have really used that to be extrapolated on, but no, and I'll get back to that with the plot summary and the writing as a whole. But yeah, he's a good actor, so sorry here, and he wasn't really, used as the best of his ability, just like Dominique Fishback. Dominique Fishback is, again, supposedly a really good actress, but she played Alina, and I mean, she was okay apart from just her lines. Like, the way she delivered them were believable. I do feel I was immersed in this film as a whole with all the characters, but just some of the writing really genuinely wasted potential there, which is unfortunate. Everyone else is fine apart from that. No notable exceptions apart from one, that's being Wheeljack. What the fuck did they do to Wheeljack? You had a perfect Wheeljack from the Bumblebee, the 5 seconds that we saw of him, voice and design, and they just fucking ruined it, man. They give him this Hispanic accent, I guess you could say. They even point it out in the movie. Like, Noah's like, oh, why do you have an accent? You're an alien. But they just make it as a laugh, as a joke. It doesn't land, and it just feels like a punch in the gut and the balls, and it feels like a producer sort of thing. And that's a very producer. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. As a whole, without getting into spoilers, the movie's plot and writing, a lot of potential, but left a lot to be decided as well. And it didn't fully work. Tries to please the fans and tries to be casually acceptable as well, which you'd hope they would go for, but it never really hit its mark there, though, unfortunately. So we get a good pacing for about the first 20 minutes. After those first 20 minutes, it really just goes zoom, and just goes so fast, and there's like only one moment where it sort of relaxes and calms down for a moment, and it just goes full speed again, and it's just, I will say, it doesn't feel like 2.5 hours at all. It feels like 1.5 hours, which I guess you could say is a compliment, but when your plot's going so fast, and I guess they really need to try and fit as much into this movie as possible, and probably would be better if they just made this 2 movies. Yeah, it wouldn't be too bad of an idea. But yeah, it just goes non-stop. Like you're going down a roller coaster for the whole rest of like 2 hours of the movie, with like a short bit where you're going flat and then down again. So yeah, at like 1.5 hours. Now we're gonna get into spoilers, so I'm gonna give it a rating now, for the people that don't want to hear any of the spoilers, and we'll talk about the spoilers after that. So out of 10, I'll give it a 6 to 6.5 out of 10. It's not bad, but it's not good. It's worse than Bumblebee, but better than all but maybe 2007 Michael Bay Transformers. I'll put this probably on the same level as 2007 Transformers movie. I wouldn't say either of them are better than each other, but yeah, it really really not the best. And after Bumblebee, that's probably why we were hoping for so much more, and so many people felt disappointed. Right, I'm gonna give it a little bit of time, a couple of seconds before spoilers, and you know what? Probably gonna finish this while I let all the guys get out for the spoilers. Alright. Let's talk about the writing. And this, we will need to talk a little bit about spoilers with the writing, which is why it's the spoiler section. So is everyone gone who doesn't want spoilers? Okay, let's go. The writing does feel like more one of the Michael Bay films. It does not feel like Bumblebee in any way. Bumblebee felt fresh. It felt decently paced and just nice and wholesome, you know? This film definitely touches more of that dark, gritty shit, which Michael Bay is known for. You know, it really tries to sneak in those Michael Bay moments. It really feels like the director and the producers are at odds. The director has this great vision with all these ideas and deeper cut references, and just the producers are like, fuck that, doesn't matter. Let's just make an action-filled, slocky movie that will just get everyone to see it. You know? And it just really feels like they're at odds with each other. And there have been a lot of leaks. Some of them, which kind of funny, I'll get back to that in a minute, but a lot of rumors as well, leaks about there was a completely different cut that was shown to test screening. Well, not completely, but a mostly different cut, which would have been a lot closer to what the directors wanted, and I want to see that cut. I want to see the director's cut of this film, because I feel like it would be a much better film. Dare I say, maybe make 2 films, split it up, split it in half, make it have, you can have the same length, but just make the pacing better. That I would have want. That's what I want. But no. Yeah, feels like a Michael Bay film. It feels like a Michael Bay directed film. It's a Michael Bay produced film. I'm not trying to say all the issues are because of the producers. Probably some of those things were writing, and dare I say, if you're directing and writing a film, you need to stand up to the producers. But I guess when we're talking about a toy franchise, you really can't do that much. You have to do certain things that you probably wouldn't necessarily want to do. So yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to say that it is the producer's fault, but it does explain a lot. A lot of the issues, a lot of things I do feel like a Michael Bay film are likely because of that. Things like shallow character development and the pacing and the action not being. I mean, the action scenes are great, but again, could have been a little bit better. It feels like a Michael Bay film, and it feels sterile, clinical, like they're trying to fill off a checklist, you know, like I'm trying to do with this review, and it doesn't feel quite right. You know, I definitely want to, if there is a cut, a director's cut, I want to see it. You know, I'd pay good money for this, and I pay a decent amount of money. Get to that a bit later. Right. There's a few good moments in the film. We're gonna go over some of the things I like and dislike. Well, we've gone over the things I dislike. Let's go over the things I like. There are a few good moments in there. Ares' death was good. By the way, I'm with spoilers. I'm gonna speak as if you've seen the film. I will give a short recap of the film in a minute, but I'm gonna speak as if you've seen it. Ares' death actually did seem well executed. No pun intended. I wish they developed Ares a bit more before that. And there are some apparently line that she says before she dies is ad-libbed. If that line wasn't there, it probably would have felt very hollow. It probably would have felt kind of shit. They move on from it instantly. You don't get any time to dwell on it or take it in, which didn't feel quite right, especially with the hints I was saying with Primal and Ares' history. You know, it doesn't feel quite right. That was also after Ares' death. There is a scene with Noah talking. He mentions earlier in the film to Elena that we should destroy the key, you know, the space bridge key, whatever it's called. I think they call it transwarp key, and it's like he makes a good point for it. He makes a really good point for it, and it's like, no, but they won't be able to get back. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point too. There would have been a perfect opportunity for trying to have a decent conversation about that too. No, and they have a short conversation about it. That's the scene after. I think that's after Ares is dead. It might be before. But it wasn't developed. It really could have been. It just needed a little bit longer. You know, like, Noah is an ex-soldier, right? He has all these really good skills that put him in the perfect opportunity for this movie, which is why it feels like they made him an ex-soldier to explain all the things he does in the film. And then you have the contrast of Elena, who's like just a random civilian, a museum curator, a researcher. Not even that, she's a fucking assistant for someone that is a curator for the movie, who is also knows nothing about history and gets all of it from Elena. Like, you have all these ideas here that you really could have worked with, and I want to say good things about this. This is the section I'm meant to be saying good things about, but it's just there are so many things that are set up really good. I like have the perfect opportunity to be entertaining and just good, but just weren't. For the most part, the action scenes, right? They were pretty good, apart from the first action scene, which is fucking dark as hell. Like, we had proper dimming and everything. Like, okay, so with this film, the advanced screening was in the deluxe cinema. They call it VMAX. Yeah, funny name. Where everyone gets like reclining robo seats and lots of armor space and everything, and it was really nicely dimmed, huge screen, almost IMAX, but not quite, but really good screen and sound and everything. Really dim lights, barely visible for you to walk around if you need to go to the toilet, whatever. And that first fight scene was just too dark. Really, just too dark. You want to see what the character's doing, and the later huge fight scene. That first fight scene where Bumblebee dies, it feels like he just dies for no reason. Because he comes back later, and they're like, the reason that he can't come back sooner is it really feels contrived. Like it's an arse pull sort of thing. Like, oh, energon's not charged. When is energon is just energy. Why does it need to be charged? That makes no sense. But the later fight scene where he comes back, funny enough, both of the big fight scenes where Bumblebee dies and gets resurrected. He's in both of them. He still has that stupid thing with the voice. I don't understand why they're still doing that. Marketing, I guess. But yeah, that second fight scene was good for the most part, except the way it was cut was a little bit off. And from what I hear, the early screenings were better. It had a little bit more better pacing on the cuts and everything, so you could see a bit more. I mean, you could see everything. It's just everything was so fucking blurry that it was a little hard to see at times. Better than the Bay films though. Character building, missed opportunities again. A few scenes that feel like they should have been there, but really just aren't in there at all. In the beginning of the film, let's do a little bit of a recap before I continue with sort of some of my thoughts about individual scenes. So you start off with just human characters, it was actually a pretty good way to build up and introduce these characters. You start with Noah, who is introduced. Well, we learn a little later he's ex-military, but he's introduced to have a brother. They're living with their mother and brother and mother. Yeah, living with a brother who has like blood circulation problem or some sort of degenerative disease, and there are some implied things in here that actually could have been really interesting that weren't developed on, because he's trying to get interviews and stuff, and he has an interview for a big position. I think it's a security position. They don't explain it. Just a line that they could have used, but he gets rejected from it, and it's kind of portrayed in two ways. One way, it's like saying, well, supposedly he was a bit of a loose cannon with his military service in his old squad, which they explain a little bit. One of the characters explains a little bit, but the same guy who's talking to him, because the interview's cancelled because of he heard about Noah being a loose cannon and things like that. The guy who was supposedly going to do the interview has a line where he's like, "Don't need one of you or someone like you," and it's like, are you trying to say he's racist or what? Because it feels very not 100% committing to the idea of this character being like an arsehole or racist or something. It's written in a way where you don't know, and it's like, is that something that would have been done a little bit different if producer had his way? Because you get these ideas in the beginning, especially of how terrible the characters are. I guess you could say terrible the characters are being treated. Like Noah's ex-military, and we don't get any of his history. We don't know where he fought or if he fought in combat or anything, or if it was just a random service or not. But like, you have this sort of subtle commentary of like, well, how ex-militaries or veterans are treated, and that's kind of interesting. This sort of like little subtle commentary. Felt kind of like the director was trying to say that, but that wasn't developed much. Yeah, a lot of things that like interesting ideas, But yeah, he doesn't get the job. Ends up doing a carjacking job with someone, one of his friends or whatever, and turns out he stole Mirage, and there's this whole car chasing which you see in the trailer, and then Mirage reveals himself and all of that, and then Prime comes in, and there's this bit where RC does like a scan of him and is able to tell immediately, oh, he's ex-military and all these things, and some new rules, I guess you could say, shown there. This all happens. The reason that Mirage comes out of hiding and all of the Transformers come out of hiding, at least to Noah and a few other humans, is the fact that Elena finds half of the transport key. Sorry, I completely forgot. The way the film opens is Unicron destroying this planet. Right, this Unicron destroys this planet. You know what planet it is? And that's interesting because the way Beast Machine ends, of course, Cybertron gets transformed into a eco-technical sort of thing. It kind of feels like that's what they were implying to fans. You know, that's one of those things that they don't say anything about it. They always just refer to it as our home, the Maximals. But Ape-Link's there. Ape-Link fucking dies at the beginning to Scourge. And I have some words on the Scourge a bit later. But Ape-Link dies to Scourge. He's revealed to be like this really strong guy. Maximals get away with the Transwarp Drive because Unicron is said to only... It's kind of confusing. They sort of say he's in a different universe at some point, but he isn't. He's in this universe, but he uses the Transwarp key to get around, basically. Which, you know, actually, it kind of makes sense. You know, like, he's this giant planet. He can only go so fast. Which in space doesn't really matter because mass, and you don't have things like drag or gravity, something like that. Anyway. That's kind of like the Maximals get away. Optimus Primal, who becomes the new Maximal leader, and all of that, get away. Oh, and Scourge takes off the Maximal symbol off Ape-Link and puts it on his arm with all these other symbols, like the Predacon symbols there. What kind of looked like the Elite Guard symbols there from Prime. And animated set. Yeah, there are some references, Easter eggs. But yeah, that's how it begins. Prime and Noah talking. Prime sees Elena's accidentally triggered out of the statue where half of the transport drive is hidden. She accidentally triggers this thing that only the Transformers can see. They do throw a line in that explains why humans can't see it, which would make sense, because if there was a giant beam going into the sky that humans could see, there would probably be a lot of people going there. Which, yeah, throw a line in that explains it. Not bad. Maybe a little convoluted, but, you know, it's not bad. But that also triggers all of the... not Predacons. I forgot what they're called. Terracons. They're called Terracons. Terracons, right? That beam of light going into the sky somehow triggers and tells all the Terracons to come to Earth. And they all crash land under the Brooklyn Bridge. No one sees this. And I'm like, you're going to throw lines in to explain, like, the giant beam thing. Can you at least throw in a line that explains why no one's seeing them crashing down the Brooklyn Bridge? Because they didn't crash into the Brooklyn Bridge, they crash under it. But anyway, they all collate, the Terracons and the Autobots all collate around where the beam is coming from, which is the museum where Elena works. And, big fight ensues, and Bumblebee dies. But he doesn't really. I mean, he comes back later. He dies, and of course, Prime is really upset. You'd kind of expect Prime to get second wind there. You know, everyone gets beaten by Scourge, and then the Maximals show up, and I think the Maximals show. No, they don't show up there. Ares shows up there though, which makes sense. She can fly. She can go across the oceans, all of that. She shows up and. So the Terracons get what they wanted, which was half of the Transwarp key. They fuck off because Ares is there. Everyone's defeated. Bee's dead. Not looking good. Then they have a conversation. There are some things cut out here, which we know from leaks and rumors now from test screening. And Unicron gets revealed and all of that. Scourge talks to Unicron, and there was a really cool effect they did where whenever Scourge talks to Unicron, the area around him transforms into inside of Unicron. But it's done in a way that it's very obvious that only Scourge is seeing this, and they confirm that a little bit later when Scourge and Unicron stop talking, because Unicron's like, you only have half of the transwarp key, and Unicron has this really off line where he's like, I am so hungry. And it was just delivered in a very odd way. Like, if it was just delivered like, my hunger is eternal, or something like that, that would have been so much better. But it was like, I have not feasted in so long, I am hungry. And they didn't say words like hunger or they used the word hungry for Unicron. Unicron says that, and I'm like, you can say my hunger grows, I need something. I think he says it in that way, but he doesn't say it in a cool way. He says it in a very lame way, which is not quite right for Unicron. We only ever see his eyes, by the way. You see his eyes inside him in his planet mode. That's all we ever see. We don't see him transform, which supposedly will come later. Which, okay. Anyway, Scourge talks to him, then Airazor takes him away. They go in Stratosphere. By the way, there was a cutscene with Prime destroying Transit, which was cut. We've seen the designs for Transit. We also see a screenshot of that scene, and we see it was a lot closer to the Bumblebee design of Prime, which was alright. Actually, one of my favourite Prime designs ever. And yeah, it just... that was cut. There was some Easter eggs in there that were cut, which would have been actually really cool, but whatever. 2.5 hours, we can't have it be longer than that. It's already long enough, isn't it? Even though it's arguably too long already. But yeah, they take Stratosphere over, and thankfully they don't try and bring it in with the Michael Bay films. With Stratosphere, they just have him as a character. He shows up later, but yeah, it's cool. Anyway, you got Elena and Noah, they're inside and everything, and Noah and Elena have this conversation, which just felt quite good. It was pretty good character building there. Elena starts off... oh, by the way, in the museum, they have this whole thing where freezers, these mini cons basically that come out of Scourge, are like, they do like a horror section, and there was actually one jump scare that actually made me physically jump, and made a bunch of people jump. But it was like only like a minute long, unfortunately. It didn't really bring it past there. And yeah, they're inside Stratosphere as well as everyone else. B's dead, Prime's upset. By the way, Scourge takes B's Autobot symbol off, which is kind of, you know, what he did with Ape-Link at the beginning. By the way, Ape-Link isn't the same Ape-Link we ever know. It's just a name being used. But yeah, that happens. They're talking, and Noah's like, we should destroy this other half of the key, because if they're joined, Unicron's going to come here and destroy Earth. Which, yeah, good point. Elena's like, you're right, but they wouldn't have a way home, because this is the thing. Prime and everyone is stuck on Earth. They have no way of going home, and that's the thing with Optimus Prime. And that was one of the cutscenes. Apparently, Transit's like, oh, the Decepticons are taken over and won, and now you're stuck on Earth. You understand that Prime is like tired of this shit. He is upset, and that's the feeling you get. You get the feeling that he's very tired of this, but it feels surface level, almost. I don't know how to describe it in the best words, but yeah, it sort of dilutes the character of what we know Optimus Prime is, and it brings it closer to the Bay Prime, especially with some of the words he has later. Because we're going to Peru, which is because Airazor is telling everyone, well, the rest of my crew is in Peru, but crew's in Peru, and yeah, they find, well, they go to the place where the second half of the key, or the transwarp key, is meant to be, and it's in Peru, and they have a little bit cooler Indiana Jones sort of thing. Noah even says Indiana Jones, literally fucking says, "Oh, I feel like Indiana Jones," which is funny because of what's happening later in the year with the new Indiana Jones movie. But yeah, it's called out sort of like a thing in the catacombs of Peru or whatever, and but the other half's not there because Optimus Primal has it, and then they find Optimus Primal. By the way, Scourge and the rest of them are inside of of Peru, and Optimus Prime and the other Autobots are all hidden, of course, in there. The alt modes. And they have a lot of scenes that are like, look at this, Optimus Prime is a truck now. He's a over-engine truck now. Isn't this what you wanted? They have a lot of scenes like that. Apparently, there's some cutscenes as well in Peru where, well, we all knew there was going to be a scene where Prime pushes Scourge upside down in truck mode, but that was cut. So yeah, we know that, and yeah, they go through. They're being attacked by the Minicon freezers, and they escape, and then the Autobots meet the Maximals. Cheeto gets a line. I think that's the only line he gets in the movie, and unfortunately, a scene with him having a line later was cut where he says, "Oh, behind you, big bot." That would have been beautiful. Rhinox's only line was cut as well. What the fuck? Rhinox is probably one of the most interesting characters. Besides Rat Trap, which isn't in the movie. He's one of the most interesting characters. All the interesting characters from Beast Wars are like, not in this movie, or are changed so much they're basically not in the movie. You know? And they never develop the characters that we do have. But yeah, they meet up. It just feels so fast paced. Then they have a fight with Scourge. Scourge hits Airazor. Elena later says to Airazor, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Well, when Scourge touches you, he leaves his mark," sort of thing. She says, "I'll be fine, no." And then later on, this is like the only lull they have is when because they get the other half. Well, no, this is the lull they have is like they're sleeping and resting. They have one half of the transport key because Optimus Primal has it, and then Scourge has the other half. It's just that they're trying to hide from Scourge. There's this bit with the fact there's this tribe that like one of the first tribes that had contact with the Maximals, and they are still known, and they show up, and it feels like it has no purpose. It really doesn't feel like it has much of a purpose. By the way, when we get to Peru, that's when Wheeljack is introduced. And supposedly there are some cutscenes about Wheeljack and RC having this sort of like character connection. That was cut. And thankfully one of the lines that was cut, that, you know, there's a scene where RC is inside of, she's in her humanoid mode and she's inside of Wheeljack's alt mode. And Wheeljack says, "Oh, it's been a while since you've been inside me." And it's like, that was cut. I'm like, thank God, because we already had one of those jokes earlier in the movie, which feels very... It's fine as a joke, but it feels kind of wrong and dirty in a kids' movie. Yeah, so... Airazor goes evil because she's been hit by Scourge. And then there's this kind of nice-ish scene where she dies. I say nice because it's well performed, well executed, and yeah, she has a line where she's like, "Do it, it's okay." She has enough control to say that, and Primal kills her, and that was. I wish there was a bit of time afterwards, but oh well. But Noah and Prime, by the way, they're all being attacked by the Terracons while this is happening. I don't think Scourge is there though. Actually, no, he is. Noah goes off, ready to destroy the other half of the transport key, because without it, Unicron won't be able to come to Earth and destroy Earth. And by the way, this is earlier in the film. Mirage gives Noah a gauntlet thing that can shoot. They kind of have a joke by the fact that he doesn't know it's a gun until like he's able to use it, which I don't know how that thing shoots or whatever. He's about to destroy the half of the thing. Optimus comes out the bushes and says, "No, don't do it," and Noah doesn't shoot it. And he's like, I'm sorry. It's wrong of me to do this. We're gonna do this together, sort of thing. But then, of course, Scourge comes out and fucking takes it. Or Elena gets it and then gets carried away. I think that scene is what happens before Ares' death, because Ares takes Elena and Scourge shows up and Scourge is like, "Oh, I got it." And Scourge has this line where it's like, "Oh, didn't I kill you before?" Because he killed Ape-Link, which looks just like Primal. And it's just like, it just feels like, why is that line there? It feels kind of wrong, almost, especially for the severity of the scene we're going for. They have this line earlier saying like Scourge is like invincible because of Unicron's power, but that doesn't matter later in the film. Anyway, so that's the second half. Everyone thinks it's over. Scourge opens up the portal. Unicron starts coming through. No one sees this. None of it shows up in universe news or anything, which is kind of weird. That a giant planet that's bigger than Earth is about to destroy Earth, but whatever. Unicron's coming through. Bunch of Terracons are coming through. Some reason, bringing the transport key to the top of this mountain turns into a giant pillar. It feels a little bit convoluted. The fact that it has the power to literally physically transform the environment. Whatever. Apparently there's the Autobots and Maximals think there's no hope, and then Elena's like, "But I remember the symbols that are the deactivation key from Ares," which apparently Primal didn't know, which you think he would, but he does know the deactivation key, but whatever. And they're like, "Okay, well, is there a way we can get to the fucking transport key now? It's going." And they're like, "Well, there's conveniently some human-sized holes you can go in." And it's like, okay, whatever, sure. And fights happen, big fight. B comes back because when Unicron shows up, apparently he releases a big energy wave that causes the energon that is set up earlier, that they're like, "Well, we can't revive B with this energon infusion because the energon's not active." Apparently when Unicron shows up, he activates it inadvertently. Yeah. By the way, earlier in the film, when Noah goes to the museum to try and get the first half of the transport key, Mirage turns into a fucking dump truck. And I'm like, so can he mass shift? And we get back to that in a little bit. But he also, early in the film, he's like, the way they get Noah on board to actually help him, because originally Noah's like, "I don't want to help you. I'm done with this shit. My brother's sick. I don't want to help you. I don't want to risk my life. I've already done that enough," sort of thing. And then Mirage is like, "Well, you could sell me afterwards." So they basically bribe Noah into this. But Mirage turns into a bunch of different vehicles, including an F1 car, and I'm like, it wasn't the car, but it felt like one of those blue ball things. So like, we're gonna tease you, It felt like, I will say, Mirage felt like it should have been Jazz. The only reason he was Mirage was because of his powers, but it really should have been Jazz. And also the reason I didn't want it to be Jazz, because if they did ever want it to be in the Bayverse continuity, then it would contradict Jazz. Then it wouldn't, though. I don't know. Well, kind of, because Mirage kind of dies but doesn't. Anyway, fights happen. B comes back. They have some music. By the way, music in this, I'm going to take some words from Bobby, Mr. Scoreface, and say, yes, the music, it was almost period correct. It was regionally correct, yes. Very regionally correct, Brooklyn and everything. But some of the song choices, all 90s, some of it was a little later 90s because the film was set in 94. Some of it came out after 94. would have been a little bit nicer if they actually kept it correct time-wise and had it be more diegetic. Maybe Bumblebee, who speaks through his radio, played some of the music, which, that would have been good. Which he supposedly kind of plays music through his radio for that scene where he comes back. Have this big fight, some of the other guys die, Scourge dies in a very Bayverse sort of way, and they have this one scene in particular, this where Scourge's faceplate gets blown off. And they film it in a way that it's meant to be the lead up to a big face reveal. But he's just a dude with a big scar on his face. A weird looking funny dude with a scar on his face. And we, of course, all of us watching this were thinking, oh, it's going to be Bayverse Prime. Which would have made sense with the whole transport key being able to cross universes. That would have been a really cool way to bring it in, but they didn't. Because they probably didn't want to contradict any things, even though the whole timeline's really fucking contradicting itself anyway. They didn't have enough balls to do that. Mirage supposedly dies protecting Noah, which is kind of sweet. By the way, Mirage's design, it didn't bother me that much. It did a little bit though. Kind of the thing I was saying with him turning into an F1 car earlier. It's like they're teasing you, but they're never going to commit. And it really should have been Jazz if he is a Porsche 911, but whatever. He supposedly dies, but he doesn't because he comes back like 5 minutes later while he can't move, and he turns himself into an exosuit for Noah. So we now have kind of like a pretender Power Master thing going with Noah and dead Mirage. Like Noah's wearing Mirage's like dead suit, his body basically, and he shifts down sidewise, so he's mass shifting again. And then Prime comes over and helps him and defeats Scourge. By the way, earlier Prime in Peru has this line where he's like, I'm going to take his head. I'm going to kill him and take his head. He literally says, I'm going to kill him. Optimus Prime says, I'm going to kill someone. It doesn't feel right hearing him say that, and then he has this bit where he's killing Scourge and he says again, like, for what you did to my friend, you will die, or something like that. He does have one good line where Unicron speaks to him. Prime's about to destroy the transport key because he realizes that's the only way to save Earth. Prime has a sort of character development where he realizes he really should save Earth, which does not feel like Prime. Prime should not have this character. This should be something that Orion Pax goes through. But no, we're dealing with a Prime that's millions of years old, who has to have this development. It feels kind of like something that is for casual audience, because audience, like fans, would know this doesn't feel right. Prime does have this cool line because Unicron's like, I could give you everything that you want, and Prime's like, then die. And I was like, you know what, that's not bad. It's not bad. Supposedly in the cutscene when he's being sucked up by Unicron, he does get sucked up. However, that's a cutscene and they changed it so that Primal and Noah saves him. Primal has this line where it's like, says, okay, earlier in the film, Primal says, I looked up to you, or I look up to him. I've looked up to him because, they're supposedly from the future and time travel because the transport key can do that. Where Primal's like, I've always looked up to him, but I didn't expect him to be this way, because Prime is very off in this movie, like he's very tired and sick of this shit, which is right. Primal's right. This doesn't feel like Prime. And then later in the film, just before Prime's about to destroy the transport key, Primal's like, this is pivotal to our future, referring to the Maximals. And it kind of implies that Prime's about to sacrifice himself, which makes sense with the cutscene, but Noah, in his exosuit, which is about the same size as a human, maybe a bit taller with this exosuit on, is able to hold Optimus Prime, the whole of Optimus Prime, from being sucked up. He isn't able to pull him in, but then Primal comes back and pull him in, so... yeah, basically, they saved the day, they killed all the bad guys, they sent Unicron off to God knows where. And then end credit scene, just before the credits, you get Noah. After the title screen where it says Rise of the Beast, they have the scene where Noah goes in for another interview. They have this whole back and forth with this guy. This guy reveals that he knows that Noah is in Peru with the Transformers. And they have this big reveal where he gives them the card. He says, "Thank you for your service. We'll pay for your brother's hospital medical problem, whatever." You give him a card. You think it's going to be a Sector 7 reveal, which supposedly it was. There was a cut where it was a Sector 7 reveal, but it's revealed to be G.I. Joe. And they show a hangar with like a plane under construction and whatever. It's a bit off. And then there's no post-credit scene. Don't stay through the credits. There's no reason. 90% of the cinema did stay through the credits, like me, because we heard there was going to be a Megatron at the end. Again, it's not been confirmed if it's a cut scene, like a scene that was cut, or whether it just is just a made-up thing where we're going to see the like classic Megatron design in live action sort of thing. But there was an audible sigh when there was no Megatron, because so many of us believed those rumors. And as I was coming out, I heard multiple people saying, "I really believed Megatron was going to show up. Oh, I heard those rumors. I really hoped they were going to be true," sort of thing. And I was just like, alright, yeah. Yeah, that's basically the movie summarized. I know I missed a lot of things, but really you're not missing out much with that summary. Yeah, there could have been some other scenes in there and made it good. So I've said about the music and everything. As a whole, the sound and visuals are good. So that's not something I can complain about. I feel it's just a note I should say. The only thing that's notable is the some of the things don't quite fit with the music. For as a whole, it doesn't feel like there was any reason for this to be in the 90s, except that it's a sequel to B, which is in the 80s, to Bumblebee, which was set in the 80s. But yeah, no one's wearing any fashion that's from the 90s or not. You have like a Wu-Tang poster, but that's it. So as a whole, do I recommend this film? I gave it 6.5 earlier. If you're a fan, there will be some things that you enjoy. There will also be things that you feel are sort of like teasing you and not fully committed as well. So I say watch it, not at like a expensive sort of screening. Just watch it at like a cheaper screening sort of thing, and even dare I say more nefarious. Pirate it. I don't think you're wrong for pirating this film, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, it's not the best. Supposedly it's gonna be a trilogy. We'll see how it goes. I'll be there for it, but I think it's gonna be great. They're trying to make a multiverse with fucking G.I. Joe and Transformers. Could be good. You have some good fucking things to take from. You got a lot of good comic books to take that from, but knowing it might be butchered, we'll see. Now, I will be honest, some of my opinions of this might be tainted, because something happened with this movie. My fucking electric scooter was stolen. Here's the bike lock. If this movie was an hour shorter, it probably wouldn't have been stolen, because it just got dark when it was gone, when people were going home. So I won't lie, some of my feelings might have been like tainted because of that event. Kind of sort of a sour taste in my mouth after the movie. I wouldn't have actually felt as bad about a scooter being stolen if the movie was good. It would be like, well, at least I lost it to watching a good movie. But so instead of a $30 advanced screening, it was more like $800 advanced screening. Yeah. Sorry if I rambled a bit there. I did write a lot of the script, and of course I'm pissed. I didn't want to do this review solo, because really am a little quite disappointed with this film. I wrote this script at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I think it's about time we wrap it up. Rambled long enough for a film that probably doesn't deserve it. I've probably spoken for longer than the film deserves it, and I'm probably going to cut out some of these bits as well. But well, I cut out some of these bits like the film did, but the film really shouldn't have cut them out. You know what to do. If you enjoyed this, if you have any feedback, if you have any thoughts on the film yourself, leave them in the comments below. If you agree and like it, like the video. If you disagree, dislike it. If you think I'm wrong, tell me below. If you want to see more, subscribe, hit the bell notification button, give you notifications whenever I upload a video. But for now, thank you for watching.